screen before I get started. It is not. Here we are. Okay, are you seeing my screen in the full screen? Full
Yeah.
slides? Perfect. So I am going to talk about data, about forest product statistics, and I want to start with an activity. So I'm at FAO in the Forest Product Statistics Unit, and we host the database, the forest product component of the database FAO stat, FAO stat. And the link is here in the bottom of the screen. And I'm just curious, want you to give a guess how often our data are downloaded. So they're downloaded 30 times an hour, and they'll be downloaded again once before I even get to the title slide on average. So what sort of information is in our database? Just as an example, you could discover what country produced the most wood fuel in 2018 in cubic meters. So which country you might guess? It's Serbia. And in fact, all 4 countries produced wood fuel at an estimated similar order of magnitude, which I think is interesting. So what else can you get from our database? I want to talk about today where that information comes from, what other information we have. I want to talk about how we're innovating and expanding to improve the data quality, the data quantity, the utility of our data, and how we communicate the data. So you can observe in this little film that we have a very long time series of data. It started in 1961, if you may remember. And I'm just displaying the top 5 countries in production of industrial roundwood. So the film tells a story of changing trends, changing political boundaries. It shows that overall we've increased production, and it gives you an idea, even without a map, of how shifts have occurred across the globe in that production. So we collect data on a total of 59 product categories. It is increasing all the time, and I'll talk about that just a little bit in a few minutes. We include production and trade of primary products. These might include roundwood, sawnwood, pulp, paper. We also include trade in secondary products, such as wood furniture and packaging materials. So most people don't know exactly how these data are collected, and I want to share a bit how that's done. We have been collecting the data since 1947, and they're currently collected through the Joint Forest Sector Questionnaire. That's been happening since 1999. And the Joint Forest Sector Questionnaire, or JFSQ, is designed and distributed in coordination with our partner agencies. So that, of course, includes ITTO, who you heard from this morning, the International Tropical Timber Organization, as well as UNECE and Eurostat. So how does it work? We send a questionnaire in the form of an Excel spreadsheet. It's emailed out to a responsible country correspondent from each country in the world and territories. Exactly which agency sends to which country is obviously a part of our partnership. These data are then returned to our partners where they are validated and compiled and then sent back to FAO, where we continue to do validation and compile them. So what's important to understand is that the countries are supplying us with these data. So we don't go to the field and collect these data. We do capacity building in the field to help countries identify and provide these data, but we don't collect the data ourselves. We ask countries for them. We have paired data on production and on trade, and we're coordinating this process across agencies, and this helps to reduce, for example, the reporting burden on countries. They only report once in the forest sector on production of forest products. So some of the things that we do to validate the data here at FAO, again, to understand we're not going in the field and validating it in country, we're looking at how the data are structured and making sure that egregious errors are eliminated, and to the best of our abilities, we know that the data are reflect what's on the ground as a strong estimate. Okay, so we check on the aggregates. Are the sum of sub-items totaling to the right aggregate? We look at year-to-year change, make sure it looks realistic. If it looks like a huge jump, is there something in the news, for example, to explain it? You know, lots of new sawmills were built, something like that. And we check on units, missing data, misclassifications, whether or not things add up. So apparent consumption and a wood material balance check. So is enough industrial roundwood removed from the forest and or imported to explain the amount of sawn wood and wood panels and things that are produced? And then we might go back to countries and check with data. But that's the process that we do at FAO. We're actually a relatively small team for such a large global database. And then we provide these data in a whole variety of formats. So we're slowly moving on the left here is the Yearbook of Forest Products. This is our most iconic product. And we are slowly moving from kind of a paper yearbook to more digital and more innovative formats. So things like we have released in some years a USB drive full of data. We're looking now at releasing every year a data snapshot. So you can download a CSV file of how all the data looked in a particular year. So in 10 years, if we were to revise estimates backwards, you would still be able to see how the data look today. We have this data portal that I'm going to talk about quite a bit more. This is FAO Stat, FAO Stat. The link is provided all over the presentation, but you can really just search FAO statistics and you'll come to this portal. There's lots of different data on these portals. So this is the forestry production and trade section, but it's completely coordinated with other data available through FAO on, for example, climate emissions or agricultural production. They're all similarly formatted with the same country labels, the same country combinations, and you can easily combine those data to understand forest product production in light of global trends. So, and then we're moving also a bit towards on the right here. This is what we call facts and figures. It's one of my favorite publications. So this is a much more graphical and short publication in which we show the trends in forest product production and try to understand their meaning. There's a couple technical details. I am at the bottom of the story, a statistician, and I want to make sure that when people use our data, that they understand our data. So we have a couple of resources online that can help you if you want to go download the data and use it for any purpose. It's all freely available, that you can understand those data well. So the first of these definitions. So inside the yearbook, there is a front section. It's available in all 6 UN languages, French, Spanish, English, Russian, Chinese, and Arabic, of a definition of every single forest product listed. So if you have a question about what the difference is between, sawn wood or usually it's a question about wood panels, but if you have a question, you can go to the definition and see exactly what we are counting and what we are asking countries to count. The second resource is, I call it a diagram of our data structure. This is available online at this website. And again, if you look at our forest product statistics at FAO, you can find all these resources. This would be under classifications. And countries provide us with these observations here with a black box around, with a black outline around the box, these kind of base things like plywood, particle board, OSB, oriented strand board. So as a courtesy, we combine products to produce data that people are interested in. For example, the production of wood-based panels. And this can confuse people in the database. They're not sure, should they add wood-based panels and plywood, or is one included in the other? So just take a look at this figure and you can see that wood-based panels here includes plywood, particle board, and OSB, as well as fiberboard. And fiberboard itself includes hardboard, MDF, HDF, and other fiberboard. So this way, if you want to make sure you're finding exactly the information you want, this data structure can really help. And the last thing are the flags. This is a very mediocre screen capture of our database. And when you download or even view the data, it will automatically by default show you a flag. This is an idea to tell you where the data came from. So you can see if a country submitted it directly, if FAO had to estimate it because the country was unable to submit it, if it's a repeated value because we didn't have a better estimate than the year before. So take a look at those flags. Don't just take the data as they come, but take a look how much of the data for your product and the countries that you're interested in is estimated, how much is nationally or officially contributed. So I want to focus just a little on the yearbook and our new product, which I'll describe, or this year's publication, which I'll describe in a minute. But the yearbook has really evolved over time. It was first published in 1948. This is a copy of the cover. And back, we only had 75 countries and territories. It was just French and English. We were mailing those paper surveys out And it could be months. Imagine sending the data by mail, by registered post back, and then we were typing it in and calculating it. And then the data were only available as hard copy booklets, which had to be requested by countries if you wanted that information. And they were put in libraries all over the world. We only had 22 forest products. So we're now up to 59. And of course, we have all the languages. It's all sent digitally, and it requires a smaller team, although it's still quite a bit of work. This year would have been the 75th anniversary of the Forest Product Statistics Yearbook. It is the 75th anniversary of the Forest Product Statistics Yearbook. And in light of that, we produced a digital snapshot, so all the data are available. And we produced this digital product called a digital corporate brochure at FAO. The title of it is Sustainability by Numbers, Forest Products at FAO. And we wanted to highlight not just the data, so someone can download it or see a table of numbers in a PDF, but the story, where did the data come from? What's important about them? How are they evolving? How are we innovating? What's to come in the future? And how are these data important for designing national policies that can contribute to a sustainable future? So one of the things we really wanted to have was an ability for users to interact with the data. This is just a slide, but if you go to the actual publication, this is an interactive graphic where the user can, sorry, my pointer only works on the other screen, so I have to keep turning here, but you can grab on this little icon and you can zoom in and out to zoom on a particular time series of interest, and you can select which of the products you're most interested in. This is for forest product exports. We also have the video of top, I think 20 countries, like I showed you with 5, but 20 countries over time from 1961. You can stop it anywhere and download a picture of what you're interested in, as well as production of key products. And this way, we're not just giving the data, but we're allowing users to find the information in the context that they want. We include some stories. These stories are really important to tell. I think one of the hidden stories of forest product statistics is the classification of forest products. So in general, people seem to think that this is a boring topic. So I would like to convince you that this is actually a fascinating and important topic. So data and statistics would be the top of the story here, the part of the castle sticking out of the ground. And the only way that works is if there's a foundation of classifications, definitions, and standards. So you can imagine a customs officer in a small country in the tropics, and there's a customs officer in a large developed country in the north, and they each need to record oriented strand board in the exact same way if we're going to make our data comparable. And that has to evolve as little as possible over time if we're going to be able to look at trends over time and to understand those trends. So it's really essential that we have these classifications. And they are provided by lots of institutions. For forest product statistics, FAO also provides this classification of forest products. So that this classification, it highlights the characteristics that differentiate one product for another. I think that's an essential point to say. We first published it in 1973. So this one just published in 2022 is our third revision. And it includes, where possible, a crosswalk for forest product classifications under these relevant international classification systems. So for example, the harmonized system, which is developed and maintained by the World Customs Organization, that's revised only every 5 years. Central product classification, CPC codes of the UN Statistics Division, and those of national statistics agencies. So you have to know, for example, that the FAO classification 014 for wood pellets is the exact same product as the harmonized or HS system 4401.31 or the CPC 39281. So I don't have those all memorized. I wrote those ones down for you. But one of the ways that FAO contributes to increase quality and quantity of forest product statistics globally is to put forward and to defend revisions in these classification systems. So this is the way that new products can enter the world of global data most efficiently. So we put forward proposals, for example, for wooden furniture, and that is now, global trade in wooden furniture is now coming on board as being available in a new way. So this creates a lot of work, but it is a way that we can support innovation and new products in the forest industry. So just a fun example as why it's important to differentiate between different types of products. It helps us to understand global trends. So when we look at paper, for example, we have on the top here, other paper and paperboard, and in the gray line to the bottom is graphic papers. And this graph was really interesting to us during the global pandemic, because what we could see is that there had been an increasing trend in other paper and paperboards. These are packaging papers primarily, and it really went up again during the pandemic. That's a reflection, we believe, of online shopping and all the increased shipping that was required. Can help the industry see what's coming. And we saw a decline and then another dip in the production of graphic and writing papers, which also one might expect to dip as we all went online during the pandemic and stopped taking notes on paper. Even school kids stopped buying paper. They were encouraged to do everything online. The forest product data can also help us estimate the contribution of the forest sector to climate change mitigation. Carbon is sequestered by trees. We all know that, right? So the carbon goes in the tree when they grow from the sun, photosynthesis. And when a tree is harvested, that carbon remains in the wood and in the products made from that wood. So countries can estimate the carbon in harvested wood products as part of what they report under, say, the Kyoto Protocol. And they can do that if they have transparent and verifiable activity data for paper and paperboard, wood-based panels, and sawnwood. So now you know why we lump wood-based panels together the way we do as a convenience to users and to countries. And you can see that FAO data can be the foundation of the most basic estimates that countries can use to estimate how much carbon is in their pool of harvested wood products. So we contribute by providing these data, of course, and we also help estimate the effect of various policies on the pool of carbon. So let's take recycling, for example. If you were to recycle something, then the carbon in that wood would stay around longer. So we've conducted simulations, analyses that help us estimate what the potential impacts of recycling could really be. And this can give countries an idea of the potential impact of reuse policies on their pool of carbon and harvested wood products. And all of these are available at this link. It looks like this publication. So we did simulations for India, for example, and that indicated that if you change the half-life of paper from 2 years, which is the default that the International Panel on Climate Change gives countries for estimation, to 4 years. So just the median time that a piece of paper hangs around on Earth before decomposing, you could observe an increase in carbon and harvested wood products of 7% in country. And by increasing the half-life of sawnwood from 35, the default again, to 45, so years. So it's not a lot of reuse, but some reuse, you can already observe a 12% increase in carbon storage as compared to defaults. So these kind of information could help countries really understand that there could be a very strong value in incentivizing recycling programs. We're also working to synthesize the available science on how forest products can contribute to climate mitigation through carbon storage. It's very complex science with some debates involved. So we have some synthesis of public policies and how those have worked or have not worked, and how they can incentivize particular activities, and how this might influence global patterns of production and trade. That's some of our upcoming work, as well as more generally the potential impacts of emerging forest products in the global bioeconomy. Another report here available on our website. So just continuing to think about recycling. So we have data to track recycled paper since the 1960s. And here we have recovered paper in tons on the y-axis, and year time is available across the x-axis with 1 line per continent. And what's striking are the recent increases in production, particularly in Asia. It's a high, but no longer dramatically increasing trend in Europe and in the Americas. And this can inform the development of a circular economy, because we can see the opportunity for increased production of recovered paper in Africa, potentially in Oceania as well, although population and size differences make those kind of comparison pretty complicated. And we can ask, what are the on-the-ground limitations in terms of supply and demand? This goes back to many of the earlier presentations. And how have the past policies impacted production, to give us an idea of the future? That's what data are for, right? So the last thing I want to talk to you about today is our work on modeling and estimating wood fuel. So wood energy is the world's most important single resource of renewable energy, but we have very little official data submitted. And if you think about why that is, I mean, first off, these photos should give you an idea that it's a very diverse quantity. It goes all the way from wood pellets to just branches collected informally. And the vast majority is collected and used in Africa and in sub-Saharan Africa, where much of it is collected by hand, used in the house and never reaches a formal market where it can be tracked. So this is a value that's estimated in a very different way, but it's really essential for understanding, how many jobs are influenced by the forest sector, how much wood is coming out of the forest. It's fundamental. So we've been creating a revised statistical model. We've been doing this based on a systematic country by country data search, and that can inform policies and also our ambitions to meet certain global forest goals related to sustainable wood-based energy and goals of the Global Bioenergy Partnership. So with that, I'm just going to conclude with the same video that I started with. And while I wrap up, I'm hoping that when you look at it now, you have a much clearer idea of where these values come from, the work it takes to create these data that are meaningful over time and space, how you can access these data yourself, how FAO is working to improve data quantity, their quality, how we're communicating them differently and hopefully more effectively over time, and ideas for how our data can inform an understanding of global trends and enable creation of sustainable policies. So if you have other ideas for using our data, we welcome it. Thank you very much.
Ashley, thank you very much for super interesting and helpful presentation, even I think for both sides, for digital innovators and wood companies and organizations. That's very important to understand how this data are organized and what value can the industry can get from analyzing this data and the history of this data. Yeah, not only what happens now, but what was before, to predict, probably to create some diagrams. Thank you. And now we can start to discuss questions and small panel discussion with all the panelists, and start from the questions. Feel free to write us in the chat or raise up your hand and we'll let you ask the question. And maybe we can come back to that question by Oscar to Isabel.